From Rotten Tomatoes, we have breaking news. Am I Racist officially has a red tomato. Congratulations, Matt.
Thank you.
You were certified gray, but now you are certified red tomato. It's not fresh. They didn't give you the fresh rating. Is that what it is?
Well, it is fresh. It's not certified fresh because we don't have enough ratings, and we'll never have enough ratings because the mainstream critics are completely ignoring this film like it doesn't exist.
Isn't it true that you guys had sent a link for the preview or like to review the movie early to a left-wing critic? He wrote a critical review, but then you saw that he had never actually watched it? That's what someone told me.
Yeah, something like that happened with, I believe, with the first film. What is a Woman?
Okay.
It was reviewed. I don't remember who it was, but somebody reviewed it, and we could tell in the link that they didn't watch. They watched like a little bit.
But he authored a completely scathing review.
Yeah, absolutely. And on this one, we sent we sent it out for critics to screen, weeks ahead of time, as you do when you have a film and you're proud of it. You think it'll get good reviews, or at least it deserves good reviews. And we sent it out. We got a whole bunch of responses from a lot of independent critics who basically told us to F off, and they've got no interest. They would never review a movie by Matt Walsh.
Very independent of them.
Right. And then the mainstream critics, we actually had a few that Rolling Stone, for example, asked for a screener. We gave it to them and expressed some interest in reviewing it, never published a review. There are a couple other mainstream critics that seemed like they were interested in reviewing it, never published a review. And, I'm biased, of course, in my feeling on this, but I have been wondering, why wouldn't they just publish a review and rip it apart and pan it and say that it's terrible? That's what they usually do with quote unquote conservative movies. They could easily do that here. The Rolling Stone publishes stuff about me all the time, talking about what a terrible guy I am. So that you think they'd love to do that about this movie, and they haven't yet. And I think that part of the reason for that, well, there's two reasons. One is that the movie calls attention to something that I think they just don't want to talk about, which is that the DEI grift. And two, it's a good movie. And if they were to give any kind of honest review, any kind of credible review, I'm not saying they'd have to give it 4 stars, but they'd have to at least acknowledge, they have to give it some credit. They wouldn't be able to claim that it's just a total artistic disaster. And but then they also know that if they were to publish a review, even if it was like 1.5 stars, this is a bad movie, but it's got this and this going for it. It was kind of funny. I laughed. Even if they were to say even that much, their readership would revolt. It would be a mutiny. And so that's why they're just ignoring it, I think.
Do you think any reviewers sent their editors a moderate review, like you're saying, some negative, some positive, and the person got it and was like, I just can't run this. It's not worth the risk.
I have no idea. It would not surprise me at all. I mean, we know what happened. We have had a couple of well-known reviewers who are not mainstream because they don't work for mainstream publications, but we had, some of these YouTube reviewers. Yeah, Jeremy Johns is a big one, and he published a review, which we really appreciate. It was a positive review, and he's got millions of subscribers. And then the left spent several days on Twitter attacking this guy and calling him racist for watching, not even for liking the movie. It's just the simple fact that he watched it and said anything about it made him racist automatically. And I think a lot of these other reviewers are looking at that and they're like, I don't want any part of that.
Right. Yeah, so you ended up with, you've got 10 reviews. You've got over 1,000 audience verified ratings, giving it a 98% verified hot. I give the film, my review is 10 out of 10, and I think it is fair to call it a masterpiece. And what I mean by that is not some empty platitude of this thing is so good, I call it a masterpiece. What I mean is, in terms of what you were trying to accomplish with the film, at least as far as I see it, the film is produced perfectly. I have no notes. There's no point in the film where I said they should have done this, they should have done that. I understood it. I thought it got its message across. I thought it was hilarious. I was in a packed theater. So just everything about what you set out to do, I think you guys accomplished. That's why I say it's a masterpiece. It is a work where you've hit all of the points. I'm in a DC theater. I'm in Washington, DC, just outside of DC, to be fair. It's packed, about 90% packed, to the point where you're not going to buy a ticket in this theater because you're going to be splitting up from your group, and one person, you're going to be in that one seat in between two groups of people. So the whole theater is laughing their ass off the entire time. I'm in one of the front rows because it was hard to actually get good seats, and just laughing endlessly. And I'm like, this is a comedy film. It's not overtly political. It nailed it. So anyway, back to the point. 98% of people agree. Over 1,000 ratings. They come to Rotten Tomatoes. They review it. For a while, Rotten Tomatoes seemed to have been intentionally censoring the reviews you did have that were all good. There were 5 good reviews from big names, and it said 0.
Yeah.
And then it went to 7 and 8, good reviews, and it said 0. And only when they get 2 negative ratings do they now put the view all in there and give the score and put it at 80%, which is still good.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. I noticed exactly. It wasn't until they got, they had to get a couple of the bad ones in there. And so you can see, and then you're featuring the bad ones nice and prominently there.
Jesse Gender.
Yep. Yeah, we got some Jesse Gender, the trans.
Where's my review on this one? Do I have to submit it? Because I did a 20-minute video. It's got 500,000 views where I said it's a great film. Here's why. Here's what I think is great about it. How come my YouTube video is not listed in a review on this as a positive one?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I don't know.
They selectively chose a YouTuber who didn't like you to put in there to claim that your film was no good.
Yeah. And it is absurd, especially when it's someone that you know. Like, there's no chance in hell that person would give us anything but a bad review. But it's fine. I mean, I have no complaint about them. Just this is my point. Just catalog all the reviews, good and bad, and that's what you should be doing.
Jesse Gender said that there's no call to action at the end of Am I Racist? So what would you say to that? Was there a call to action? Is that incorrect?
I think that there is, but also I take issue with the kind of the premise there that I don't know that a movie has to have a call to action exactly. And that's one of the things some of the, we've gotten a lot of good reaction from the audience, which I appreciate. I have seen some of the criticism, and some of it I think is valid. It's not like any movie you could criticize. Some of the criticism, though, even from the right, some of the criticisms we've gotten, it's from people that don't seem to understand what a movie is supposed to do, and also don't seem to understand that this is supposed to be a comedy.
Yeah.
So I've gotten, for example, every once in a while I've heard feedback from people saying, well, during that race to dinner scene, it was good, and you were exposing the crazy things they were saying, but I didn't like how you were interrupting too much. It's like, well, but it's funny. That's why we did it. I mean, it's a comedy also.
Well, like you're like trying to put butter on and they're trying to shoo you away,
right?
And you just ignore them and do it anyway. It's a comedy film,
well, right? But the basic criticism there is someone saying basically you should have made a different kind of movie than the one you made, and that's not a valid criticism. That's like watching Die Hard and saying there should have been a lot more comedy in it. It's like that's not what. It's a different kind of movie. You have to judge the movie based on what it's trying to accomplish, which I appreciate was what you're...
The mistakes made by so many of these right-wing culture warriors who are well-intentioned and want to make culture is that they make things overtly political.
Yeah.
And, I can even point to the Daily Wire and say why this one is so good. The criticisms I heard of Lady Ballers was that it was overtly preachy, that it was actually telling you the point of the film, whereas Am I Racist is a funny film. I mean, it's slapstick, There's I don't want to give away too much, but I think this is in the trailer, like you drop a plate. You know what I mean? It's not a political message. It's not you saying, hey, look, what they're doing is bad. It's you exploring this world and doing comedy, interrupting somebody, asking them a question. The opening scene where you're in this big group of people and you keep trying to talk. And then you're like, I was going to say that. That's what I was going to say. Like, it's just jokes. And so what you get out of that, the reason why it's substantially more effective politically by not being overtly political is that if I tell somebody I know who doesn't like politics to go see it as a comedy film, they're going to laugh at you tripping and falling. They're going to laugh at you trying to put the butter on the plate when the person's telling you not to. And the butt of the joke is, hey, look how silly these people are. So the impression that people get from it is, Matt is a funny guy. Ha ha, he played a prank. He's so funny. Those people looked so dumb. There's nothing else beyond that you need to understand politically. You don't need to go to someone and say, I'd like to teach you about why critical race theory is wrong. See, back in 1984, Kimberly Crenshaw, it's like, no, you don't need any of that. That's for podcasts. That's for high-level, esoteric political conversations. A comedy movie need only show Matt Walsh slip on a banana peel.
And you have to put the message cannot come before the story, and in this case, the comedy, if it's a comedy. And this is a mistake that it's a mistake that kind of you look at like Christian movies historically for the last 20 or 30 years, and there have been some good ones. I'm not trying to write them all off, but one of the major problems with Christian films for so long is that the message was obviously the first priority, and so they said to themselves, well, we got the message down, that's all that matters. This is all very nice, it's biblical, it's the right message. And so then the script and the writing and the acting and all that, the production value doesn't matter as much. But the problem with that is that you end up with a bad movie. And when you have a bad movie, then you also don't get the message across as well as you want to, because people aren't watching the movie. The only people that are going to watch the movie are the ones who are only there for the message. And those are exactly the people who don't need to hear the message because that's what they're there for. So you have to, it's like in a way, and it's a little bit, especially when you do have a message you want to get across, it feels a little bit, especially for me, it feels a little counterintuitive, but you have to kind of let the message take a back seat so that ultimately it'll do a better job of communicating the message.
100%. There's that show New Norm. We've talked about it quite a bit. It got, I don't know, 40 million views, but everyone ragged on it. It was like the South Park of X. And the jokes were all directly on the nose. I'm a woke person. Look how woke I am. And it's like, okay, we get it. My response to that was, you want to do a sitcom that makes the butt of the jokes wokeness and makes woke, it marginalizes woke ideology. It's a regular family. They have regular problems. The teenage daughter is going on a date with a boy for the first time, and her dress gets a stain on it. That kind of silly sitcom stuff. And the neighbor who constantly comes over to bring over cupcakes or whatever is this fat, woke, purple-haired woman. And the family rolls their eyes. They're friends with her. They like her. She's the neighbor, but she's so woke. And you otherize it. So you give it a back seat. And you let the jokes exist as normal jokes that are relatable to the average person, and then you otherize the negative thing and make it the butt of the joke.
I think people are turned off when it's too heavy-handed. Like when you're saying Christian movies are just sort of like, this is the message and that's all we're going to focus on, it takes away the subtlety. And I think so much of, similar to political exhaustion, so much of what people are looking for is to consume media without it being the message or the point being shoved down their throat. Yeah. They want to be having an intellectual or emotional experience with it. And if you're just saying, and now you feel sad and now you feel happy and that's good and that's bad, it's not really anything that people want to subject themselves to.
Yeah, I also think that it's conservative entertainment can sometimes fall into, and New Norm is probably an example of this. It's kind of like this conservative version of what I would call reference humor. Yeah. And you think back to, back in the mid 2000s, there was this string of movies. It was like disaster movie, epic movie, date movie. You know what I'm talking about? And the scary movie. And that's what, and it was that. It was like they wouldn't make a joke. They would just kind of reference something from pop culture. And then they say, oh, look, Simon Cowell showed up, from American Idol. And there's no joke there. It's just, yeah, I remember that thing. And it's just the lowest form of, it's not really comedy at all because you're not making a joke. And sometimes conservatives can fall into that. New Norm, like I said, it's like they're saying, oh, you know how woke people have purple hair? Do you see? We have that too. But that could be funny, but you have to, the fact that we recognize that as a thing in culture is not funny. You have to make a joke about it, which I think is sometimes lacking.
So when you're storyboarding, when you're prepping the movie, Ben, maybe this is a question for you, but you're obviously in the back of your mind knowing that some people are going to miss the mark. They're going to want it to be a really serious documentary when it's actually a comedy. They're going to misunderstand why you decided to make this choice in editing. Is it something that you decide how much of that you're willing to absorb, or what's the cost-benefit analysis there?
Well, I definitely want to hear Matt's comments on this because a lot. This movie is his film. He was a producer on this film as well, and he's allowed to take full creative ownership of it, and he should.
That's racist.
But I really want to give credit to our director, Justin Folk, for kind of keeping all of us and our entire team with our eyes on the prize here, which is to make a good movie, and one that we all wanted to watch, and one that hits the marks that we were achieving for ourselves. And there's a quote about a conductor when he's conducting a band, and that's you have to actually turn your back to the audience to do that well. So there's definitely an aspect of that, and just trusting that we are good artists, we know how to make good art, and people will support that.
Another example of why I rate this 10 out of 10, the intro editing and music. The way, something as really simple as the graphics used, where it's showing the various names of people involved in the introduction, and the style, the editing, the imagery, the graphic art and design was spot on. Pacing was perfect. With the songs going with good music choice. I haven't seen a good comedy film in a very, very long time. Most movies that we see that are comedy are just passively comedy. Like Ant-Man, I mentioned this the other night, is a superhero movie that is also a comedy, but kind of.
Yeah.
This was actually a comedy film that was edited to be one.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up the editing, because in this movie, in this kind of movie in particular, the editing is so, of course, editing is always important in any film, but in a film like this, when you're dealing with a lot of raw footage and you're going out and doing things in real life, and then you kind of have to construct the story after the fact, the editing is all the more important. So much of this, Justin Folk, director, but also, kind of lead editor also on the project, and then our other editor, Marshall, there were early versions of the film that are just night and day, that were like, our first couple of versions were just not good. And it's all the same kind of material. It's all the same stuff, but you have to go back in and it's like finding that, okay, when do we get out of the scene? When do we get into it? Shaving off a little moment here and there can make a huge difference in the way that,
Another reason I got to point out, because you're making the light bulbs pop up. It was very obvious to me that you guys wrote a story after these interviews in some of the cases. It was obvious to me that in some of these circumstances, you knew exactly what you were going to get out of these people. I have a theory that you intentionally gave your name to that focus group in the beginning. I don't think they just figured it out. I think you got up and left, and my theory is that one of the producers was like, hey, that's Matt Walsh. I don't think it was because somebody who would have known. But that's just my theory. You don't got to say anything. However, like you guys had no idea of knowing that Robin DiAngelo was going to pay reparations. So the VO you're doing and the story you're writing very much is dependent upon what those people gave you afterwards. So you couldn't say, here's our story, now let's go get the scene with Robin DiAngelo. It was, let's go see what happens. Afterwards, okay, here's how we can fit this into a narrative and what the story's going to be. And that's crazy in film, like making a documentary or a film. I think it's massively impressive.
Yes, that is kind of how it works. So we started with a broad outline of what we wanted the movie to be, what we kind of wanted the quote unquote journey to be. But you're right that it's like, well, we don't actually know what anyone's going to do or how they're going to respond. So then you go out and you do something, and people always there's always kind of a curveball thrown at you, which may take, so we had the outline and we ended up maybe like we had the first few steps of the outline that we actually did. And then it just goes way off over here because we have to kind of follow the ball.
So then I'll ask you, did they actually know who you were and you got up and left the room and someone went, hey, that's Matt Walsh?
It's interesting. Things work all different ways. You never know exactly how things work in life, but
neither confirming or denying over there.
I can confirm.
Very Kamala Harris of you to dodge the answer.
I grew up a middle-class kid.
I've made a bunch of mini docs. I've made a handful of longer form documentaries. And so when I was watching this, and after first of all, I mean, that first woman, when you're talking about Moana and your daughter, dude, it was painful how much it was like the laughter was painful. Everybody, the whole theater wouldn't shut up. They were laughing so much. And then after a few scenes, when I realized how you would have had to have done this, I'm like, not only did they make a movie, they were navigating a maze as they were doing it to make it work. This is genius. This is masterful. It's fantastic.
I want to go back to that opening scene with the workshop, because there's some behind the scenes really, really funny stuff that happened when Matt was running across state lines to make sure that the cops weren't chasing after him after they called the police.
Yeah, I was fleeing. Left the team behind.
They called the cops on you.
They did call the cops.
You didn't even do anything. That's crazy.
Yeah. So these people are very, very frustrated with me and our other producer, Sean Hampton, another black producer, who deserves a lot more credit than I'm currently receiving. But they're very, very frustrated that him and I aren't talking to the police, and we send, the white guy, Justin Folk, to handle the cops while we're working the room. And one of them comes up and just screams, like, you guys are the producers. What the hell? You guys aren't talking to the cops. I'm like, well, I can't. I'm blown away that you would even ask me.
As a black man, how could you do that?
You really made the situation so much more unsafe for me. And
Did you really say that?
Oh, of course.
And she apologized?
She apologized. She gives me a hug.
Oh my God.
And really,
there's a whole second movie with this guy, the behind the scenes movie of the movie, and the kind of acting that's had to go on, which was and much of that will never be. It was not on film.
You guys have to release a DVD with the special features. We can see all these.
I will say that I wasn't there when they called the cops and all that, but. That seminar was supposed to go on for another hour, but they were so distraught emotionally by what happened that they had to stop. And there were all kinds of comments that I heard after the fact. There was concerns, right, from some in the crowd that
there's a school nearby, and they're like, "There's kids here," and you're like, "Yeah."
Oh no, Matt Walsh was near a school. What? Oh, dude, that is wild. Did they say anything else to you about it, or the other producer, or like that was it? That was like the key moment.
I mean, that was certainly the highlight.
How dare you ask a black man to talk to cops?
But we did. One thing I'll say to your point is that I mean, it's interesting because What Is a Woman? I think it turned out great. I'm proud of that film. Our original concept of What Is a Woman was actually supposed to be a little bit closer to Air, in that our original idea was that I would go and talk to, if you remember in that movie, the first person we talked to is this therapist, this woke gender therapist, and I ask her if I'm a woman, and she says, yeah, you probably are. And so the original concept was we wanted to kind of build from that, because now I'm like, okay, I must be a woman. And so then we're going to build from that and let like one thing lead to another, where I kind of believe her, and then we put that into action, and then we kind of filmed the rest of it, and it turned out that wasn't really going to work for an angle, and we decided to go this direction instead. I think it worked well. In this one, we kind of went back to that and said, okay, we really want to get that feeling of this thing building, so that we go and talk to one person and I learn things and it kind of changes my perspective. And then we go to the next place and it just builds and builds and builds, so that by the end of the movie, this thing can get really weird and kind of dark. And it kind of has this feling.
You want to document ascending through the cult.
Right, exactly. And then watching it back, especially when I saw it for the first time in theaters at the premiere, it felt that to me. I felt the build, and which is exactly what we're going for with that.
Thanks for watching this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to check out the live show Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. on this channel. Subscribe, and we'll see you all there.